hey there. This is weird. I haven't filmed by myself for a little while, so this could be really awkward. So today I'm going to be putting some makeup on my face, and I'm going to be talking about my own personal experiences with my skin, my relationship with my skin, how I sort of deal with issues that I've had, and where I'm sort of at now in my skincare routine. So I'm not really going to talk through the products that I use. I'll talk more about the skin stuff. I'm just going to put makeup on my face while I chat to you guys. I hope that you enjoy this video. If you do, hit subscribe, give me a thumbs up. So yeah, let's get into this, guys. So yeah, just before I start and we get into some of the content and I can start doing my face, this is just a big, loud disclaimer. I am not a dermatologist. I am not a beautician. I am fully aware that some of the issues that I've had with my skin are not nearly as bad as they could be, and this isn't me complaining, this isn't me saying poor me with my acne and scarring and whatever it is that we sort of chat about. It's more just my personal experiences, my opinion, very sort of personal to me, and I'll try and make some general statements at the end. But if you're having real skin issues, you need to see a professional, because that is not me. I'm hoping to do my beauty therapy training next year, which would be really exciting, but we'll see if that happens. So yeah, it's something that I'm interested in. So just before we get into it, in case you're wondering why my under eyes are really weird, I've got some sort of hydrogel eye patches on. These are by a brand called Chatty. They're Korean, I think, or Japanese, Korean, I think. And I keep mine in the fridge, and they're just so nice and cooling and really sort of smooth out this area. So I'm going to take those off now while we sort of get into it. I usually leave them on for about sort of 20 minutes. So I've written down a few sort of notes here so that I sort of keep on track, because I tend to ramble a little bit. Obviously, like, we don't really think about our skin unless we've got some kind of major complaint, like a skin disorder, dermatitis and eczema and things like that. It's not something that we ever sort of think about when we're kids. Well, I know for me it wasn't. I probably started thinking about my skin or noticing that it wasn't the same as people I saw around me. It definitely wasn't the same as what I was seeing in sort of mainstream media, but I think that is probably the case for most people, in that, you know, what we see every day isn't what we're seeing. Television, magazines, it's movies, etc. So I think for me, I started to think about my skin when I was probably a teenager, like a lot of people. I think puberty sort of really hit me hard in the skin department, and I think that's when a lot of people start to notice things. Like if you're going to have dry skin or oily skin, I think that's when it starts to sort of rear its head. It's when you're going to get hormonal breakouts. Your body's obviously changing a lot, and I think the big difference between being a teenager, so I turned 13 in 98, being a teenager then, being a teenager now, is that there's a lot more information available. So we didn't have a lot of the same outlets to find out about skincare, didn't have a lot of the same brands. It was very sort of limited where we got our information from. A majority of my information came from things like Dolly Mag and Girlfriend Mag and that kind of stuff. Obviously a little bit from my mum, but she'd always had difficult skin and never sort of known how to sort of deal with it either. So I think for the most part I was sort of really in the dark about it. So for me, puberty hit, and with it, sorry, let me just find this. With puberty came oily skin, and I'm not just talking, you know, a bit of a shine across the forehead or whatever. It's like very, very, very oily. And also lots of breakouts. So I had cystic acne for most of my teen years. I actually had it treated through a dermatologist, and I was put on a few rounds of a really heavy, like heavy duty antibiotic, which did help to sort of keep it under control, but I don't think that's always the best way. But at the time, it was what was available to us, I guess. So that's why I sort of went down that path. I think also, like a lot of people around this time, sort of when I was maybe like 15, 16, was when Proactive started to become a big thing, and you'd see the ads on television and had all those like celebrity endorsements and things like that. So I did go down the Proactive path as well, and I don't think it was very beneficial. I think it was more damaging than helpful. Looking back now, and the more I know about skincare and the more I know about the ingredients, it was super stripping. It was taking all of the natural goodness out of your skin, as well as taking away the inflammation, but I think it was sort of adding to it as well. It was getting you into this cycle of stripping, and then your skin would sort of overcompensate and produce more oil, which I think for me was the biggest sort of issue. So I think looking back now, I wish there'd been other ways that I dealt with it, but obviously we can't go back and change things. I also developed some really bad habits with my skin when I was a teenager. One of them was using really harsh exfoliators, like those St. Ives, you know, the apricot pit ones, and also using harsh like scrubbing cloths, because I felt like I had so many blackheads, my skin was really oily and like pimples and things like that. I thought that if I could scrub away like 25 layers of skin, that I'd somehow be left with this like, you know, perfect, flawless, no texture, and I would feel like I looked like. So I was trying to get to this ideal, but in the process I was actually doing the complete opposite of what my skin needed. I was aggravating the skin, I was creating micro tears in the skin, and all this I know now, and at the time I had no idea. I remember being in the shower as a teenager or washing my face, and I'd just be like really sort of getting in there and trying to scrub all the dirt and impurities out of my skin and take away all that texture. I'd come out of the shower and I'd go to my mum and just be like, oh, look how smooth my face is, Mum, like look how smooth it is. And honestly, within half an hour my skin would just be an oil slick, and I was sort of stuck in this cycle of stripping my skin of all nourishment, all the oil, all the natural oil was actually is there for a reason, and my body was overcompensating and producing more and more and more and more oil. So I was really stuck in this not very good cycle, and I'll talk about how I've sort of come to find that the opposite is actually probably better. Obviously the kind of makeup I was using as a teenager was very sort of different to what I use now. Obviously the 90s was very different. I only had access to sort of cheap drugstore stuff that we'd get from, you know, Big W or Kmart or whatever, because we didn't have tons of money and I wasn't spending loads of money on makeup. It was mostly just really thick, heavy foundations and shimmer pots. You know, those like pastel-y ones that were like a loose powder or like a rollerball one. And it just wasn't, it didn't work for me. It didn't last on my skin because my skin was so oily. I think the formulations have come a long way now. So I think the biggest things that sort of defined my teen years in terms of my skin was there's no information out there. No one was talking about inclusivity or diversity in skin types or skin positivity. It was very much focused on, I was always getting rid of the oil, always fighting the oil, and this led to really low self-esteem, because around this time when I was having these big sort of cystic acne breakouts on my face, it was starting to leave scarring. I had loads of blackheads, like quite intense blackheads all the way across this area, and that's also led to some scarring there as well. So my face is quite pitted and I've got quite a lot of texture here, which I've come to terms with, but it's a result of my skin as a teenager and then how I then decided to treat it. So it's sort of like a two-pronged thing. So the self-esteem thing, felt really uncomfortable about my skin. I spent a long time trying to cover it up. I spent a lot of time worrying that my skin didn't look any good, but it left me feeling really sort of quite crappy about myself. I've just kept talking and I'm forgetting to put makeup on. I better do it or this is going to be the longest video ever. That self-esteem issues sort of carried on into my 20s, the end of my teen years. Now, my breakouts did sort of slow down towards the end of my teenage years, which I was really lucky. They still sort of happened every now and again, and obviously, you know, when you're a student, you're not living the most sort of healthy lifestyle, so I wasn't doing loads of exercise, I wasn't eating great, and that sort of impacts on your skin as well. So and obviously drinking a fair amount of alcohol as well. So I did get breakouts, but mostly they tended to be like along my jaw here, which has left some scarring or some pigmentation issues that I still sort of deal with a little bit now, although good skincare now has helped reduce that a lot. Just so you know, underneath my foundation I used this Loma Beauty Natural Radiance Bronzing Primer. I am obsessed with this. It is lovely. And then this is just the IT Cosmetics CC cream in tan. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, so the scarring, the pitted skin, I would spend a lot of time trying, and this is in my 20s as well, I would spend a lot of time trying to extract these large blackheads in my cheek, and that has left to scarring there as well. I've got a couple of big sort of ones on this side. I've got a chickenpox scar here from when I was a kid, but I kind of like it. And then I've got some few other scars around as well. So in my 20s, again, felt really sort of self-conscious about it because, you know, when you're a teenager, most people around you are having breakouts of some kind. But then when you sort of get to your 20s, like most people's skin starts to calm down. Mine did to an extent, but then I was left with all this sort of scarring, and yeah, it just brought me down. It made me feel sort of self-conscious, uncomfortable about my skin. I still hadn't figured out what my skin needed. I would still use things like, you know, harsh sort of foaming cleansers, tea tree cleansers. I guess I think I moisturised. I can't really remember. I don't think it was very regular. I don't think I had a regular sort of skincare routine. It was more just like wash it and then with some kind of foamy, soapy cleanser and then maybe moisturise. I don't think I used SPF, which is such a big no-no. My skin was still really oily. Makeup didn't last on me. I hadn't worked out how to combat that at all, or how to sort of work with my skin to make makeup last, to make it sort of not overcompensate with that excess sebum production. And that sort of started to change towards my late 20s. I started thinking about doing makeup when I was maybe 26, and then I think I started studying it when I was about 27, finished when I was maybe 28. And whilst we didn't learn tons about skincare in my course, we learned how to deal with people's skincare issues when we were doing their makeup, but only in very sort of superficial ways. So it's not about making long-term change, it's just about dealing with the issue. So how to combat dryness so the makeup looks better, how to sort of attempt to stop oil coming through and making the makeup not last very long. But what that did through that learning process of doing my diploma of specialist makeup services, it sparked an interest in skincare for me. And it's when I started to learn a bit more, I started to experiment with different skincare and started to make some changes in my own personal skincare routines. It was also around this time that I started probably going down the path of like self-care and using skincare and makeup in a way as a way to look after my emotional well-being. Working a really sort of stressful job, it was kind of nice to be able to, you know, get into bed. I'd have this nice sort of ritual of putting on my skincare as a way to sort of calm myself down as before I sort of went to sleep. It's also around this time that I was watching a few sort of YouTubers, mainly makeup artists, particularly Lisa Eldridge. So her videos about skincare sort of really opened my eyes. I also started reading Carolyn Heron's blog, who is just like the skincare goddess, and I started doing oil cleansing. So I stepped away from harsh soapy cleansers or harsh exfoliators and started using, at the time I think the first one I used was just an organic macadamia oil. I would cleanse my face. I would do Lisa Eldridge's sort of lymph massage, so I'll link her video down below because it was sort of really educated me a little bit on that. Let's get some eyeshadow on. And I would do the lymph massage, and then I would sort of moisturize, and I started sort of building my skincare routine from there. And I didn't notice an immediate difference in how much oil my skin was producing, but it definitely helped. My skin looked cleaner. There was less congestion going on with it, and I'd always find after I did this lymph massage that my skin looked plumper and fresher than it sort of had. So yeah, that continued for sort of a few years, and my skin got a lot better, but I was still getting the occasional breakout. I was still having some texture issues. I sort of had come to terms with my skin by this point. I'd stopped caring what other people thought of my skin, which is okay. So sort of fast forward to now, just recently turned 33, you know, definitely in my 30s, can't deny it anymore. And I think with that comes a whole lot of change in the way that you think about yourself, the way I think about my skin, more confidence, less sort of self-doubt, but also the actual texture of my skin and the nature of my skin is changing slightly. And could be that I finally found the right sort of skincare routine, which I'll talk about in a second, or that my skin's aging, and with that comes change. So I don't know, can't figure that one out. Last year I got quite sick. I've ended up having to go on this medication. After a couple of months of taking it, my skin just completely freaked out. I ended up with all these like tiny, like millions of white bumps all over my face. It was like freaky, and it sort of almost happened overnight. I'm pretty sure it was a reaction to the medication that I was on, and obviously I haven't been able to stop taking that, but I sort of found some ways to combat it. I had a facial with my friend Eve, who's just amazing, and it was like a skin peel one. The downtime after those is pretty crazy, but it was worth it, because once I came out of it and sort of dealt with the purge, my skin just sort of came really good. So it was pretty good for a few months, and that was sort of at the beginning of this year. And then I went a bit nuts buying new skincare and trying some new stuff out. When you go in and you add like 45 new sort of products to your routine and your makeup and your skin or whatever, your skin can freak out. By freak out, I was getting all these sort of cystic bumps all along here. I was getting breakouts, but these just like maybe 3 pimples at once, usually hormonal, but they would last for like 3 weeks, and they'd be these like Mount Vesuvius sized pimples. And I was just like, right, this isn't working. I'm pretty sure that I messed with what's called the lipid barrier. So it's basically a barrier that your skin naturally has, which stops the skin underneath being exposed to the world. That's my understanding of it as a non-skin specialist person. So I'm pretty sure I screwed with mine, which wasn't a good thing to do at all. But what came from that is that I just went, okay, so gonna go straight back to basics. And I just experimented with a minimalist routine as opposed to one that had like 45 million steps, which is what I was doing before that. At the moment, this is what I'm doing in my skincare routine. So my skincare routine as it stands, I remove my makeup with a face halo, and then I do a cleanse with the Clinique Take the Day Off cleansing balm. Removes any leftover makeup that my face halo didn't get to, and just leaves my skin feeling really sort of lovely and fresh and not stripped, which is the big thing. Not sort of taking out that natural sort of goodness that my skin has, but it's just taking away the dirt. Once I've done that, sometimes I'll go in with something like the Caudalie Beauty Elixir. Haven't got much of this left and I'm too stingy to replace it because I love it, but it's so unbelievably expensive. Go with maybe an elixir of some sort, but usually not. And then I sort of let my skin breathe for a little while, and then once I get into bed, hyaluronic acid serum. I've got this one from The Ordinary, I've got this one from Tarte. Both of them are good. This one has a stupid name. It's called Mermaid Skin. I don't get it. And then I go in with vitamin C suspension. So I use a little bit of that, let that sort of sink in for a minute. I go in with a combination of the Ordinary Squalane oil, but again, I don't really think the oil that you use or the brand of oil necessarily matters. I find squalane's really good because it's actually meant for people, not meant, it's a natural product, but it's brilliant for people with oily skin because it doesn't congest. It's what's called non-comedogenic. So I mix in a bit of the squalane oil with sort of a pea-sized amount of the Weleda Skin Food. It's funny, like, I remember using Weleda Skin Food when I was a teenager as like a hand cream and for like dry skin on my feet and whatnot, but I never thought about using it on my face. And it's sort of come in and out of my life over the years, and I love the Weleda brand because they're all natural, been around for a really long time, and I think they just do a really good job. But then I started watching Katie Jane Hughes do makeup on YouTube, and she started using it on her face, and I was like, that's a really interesting idea. And so I gave it a go. I've used it on people in a few videos, which you guys would have seen. If you haven't watched them, go back and watch it. And now I use it on every client because it just gives the most amazing glow. But for me, it's too heavy to use in the day with my oily skin. But what I use it as is sort of a night mask or a night treatment. And I find that my skin when I wake up is not greasy, it's not oily, doesn't feel congested or heavy. It feels clear, fresh, hydrated, nourished. As opposed to how my skin used to wake up was, you know, oily, and I'd feel like I'd need to cleanse it. In the day, I don't cleanse. I just go with a cloth with some warm water, and then I just go straight in with the natural moisturising factors. Occasionally I'll use the niacinamide serum or a buffet serum from The Ordinary. And then of course I use SPF. And my one that I use is the Ultra Sheer Fluid SPF 50 from Neutrogena. Because SPF is so unbelievably important at protecting the integrity of your skin and also preventing skin cancer, because no one wants skin cancer. And what I've found is that my skin is smoother. I haven't had a pimple in about 2 months, which is just insane to me. All of those cystic sort of lumps that were appearing down here have like completely disappeared and gone. Blackheads are still a bit of an issue, but I keep them at bay. My skin texture's evening out. Obviously I've still got the scarring. I'm never going to be able to get rid of that unless I go down sort of the cosmetic side of things, going through like a dermatologist, maybe getting some microneedling or something down the track, but it's not something that I really think about doing, to be honest. Oh yeah, my skin isn't producing as much oil. Some days I have oilier days than others, and yes, really we've been in winter, but where I live you can't really call it winter at all. It would be a joke. I think I wore a jacket for about 2 weeks, and the rest of the time it's just been like t-shirts and maybe a cardigan. It's insane. So we'll see what it's like in summer. I'm hoping that it sort of continues in the same trend. Would be really nice. Okay, so my top tips or things to sort of, if you're going to take anything away from this video, these are the things that I would like you to take away. You got to work out what works for your skin. Your skin isn't my skin, and it's not the person next to you. It's entirely your own personal experience, your own personal journey with figuring out what works for you. Nourish your skin, all right? Don't strip it of all its goodness. You want to give it what it needs, okay? And moisturizing is like so important, but finding the right way to do it, I think, is really sort of important as well. Healthy eating, I find that really helps with my skin, and if I go through a few weeks of eating really badly, then I see it in my skin. So good skin starts in the kitchen, I think, 100%. Get professional advice. If you're having major issues with your skin and you don't know what's going on, find out what is actually happening, because it may not be what you think it is. Don't just rely on the internet. Don't just rely on my video to give you ideas about how to sort of, change your skin. But at the same time, professional advice is only going to take you so far, and you've got to work out what works for you as well. So it's about getting as much information as you can and then taking it and finding out how it's going to fit into your life and your skin routine. I think the biggest thing that I'd like to say is that I think that skincare can be like fun. I approach it with a sense of curiosity, a sense of play. I think for self-care, for creating rituals in your life, it can be really, really, really amazing with helping you to sort of, find little ways to sort of calm down and bring yourself back into you. And I think skincare for me is a really nice anchoring thing. So I found that to be really important as well. Alright, I think that's it. I've said everything that was on my list. This could end up being a 45-minute video, we'll see. I really hope that you did enjoy it, that you got something out of it. And yeah, I really hope to see you guys next time. Hopefully get another video out soon. I know it's been a bit sporadic, but life, it's busy for everybody. So yeah, I'm gonna go and clean up all this mess. I'm gonna leave my face on because I have got Lucy coming over for a meeting about a very exciting project. Thanks for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. Have a fantastic week ahead of you. And yeah, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, share it on all the things. Thanks guys. Bye.